From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
As 2019 comes to a close, there will be political and policy matters that bleed into 2020, not least of which the ugly fight between gaming giants IGT and Twin River. Lawmakers may also focus on why DCYF leaders can't seem to balance their checkbook after the Child Welfare Agency disclosed a $22 million budget deficit. 5 years into her tenure, what is Governor Gina Raimondo doing to get a handle on the problem? Plus, why is the Ocean State's governor heading to Israel for a week-long trip? Our guest this week on Newsmakers, Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Governor Gina Raimondo, it's good to have you back on the show.
Nice to be here. Good morning.
Ted and I were trying to figure out what to begin with because there's always a host of things we want to tackle. And I want to start here. It's not every day the governor goes to court and files a lawsuit against a Speaker of the House and against Senate President. But that's what you did last month over a last-minute budget provision that would allow the legislature to effectively veto marijuana regulations written by your administration. Okay, look, Governor, the Speaker has repeatedly said this lawsuit is a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of judicial resources because he said he would repeal it. Is this just grandstanding by you to file the lawsuit?
No. So a few things. One, if that's true, he should just drop his opposition to the suit. We could have a consent decree.
You don't take him at his word?
I don't, for a few reasons. One, we brought this up numerous times during the last legislative session. And you know, in fact, I said if I had a line item veto, I would have vetoed this provision, and they didn't seem to care less about it. I mean, look, this is a new industry, right? This is a new industry. Let's get it right. Let's not go back to the old ways of doing things, special deals for special people, letting people curry favor with legislators. Enough of that. That's held Rhode Island back for long enough. So I don't want to be suing. You know, I kind of agree. Why do we have to go down this path? So I would say, sign a consent decree, if you're sincere, drop your opposition to the suit, and let's do the right thing here. Let's have a transparent process, let's have it be a lottery, and let's tell the people of Rhode Island, we're moving beyond the old way of doing things. We're moving beyond special deals for special people. So look, here's the thing. For 5 years, I've worked very collaboratively with the legislature. If they want to cooperate with me to continue to get things done, fix roads, fix schools, do job training, terrific. If they don't want to do that, if they want to turn the clock back, then we'll fight, because I have a job to do for Rhode Island.
We reported last month as we were looking into all this that there's a newly formed company called Green Reservoir. It's got ties to a different company that employs the powerful lobbyist Mark Ryan, among others, and they're threatening to sue your administration if you don't start handing out the new medical marijuana licenses for dispensaries right away. I assume you were told about that. What was your reaction when you heard that?
Essentially exactly what I'm saying to you guys. There's a lot of money at stake, right? There's a lot of money at stake here. It's a brand new industry. The people of Rhode Island deserve to know it's going to be above board. If you're a powerful lobbyist, you don't get a special shake. If you know someone in the legislature, you don't get a special shake. We're going to do it professionally. We're going to do some form of a lottery. And we're going to welcome this new industry, and we're going to do it, you know, with a level playing field.
One other marijuana question. You've talked a lot about doing this lottery system to give those new licenses out. Do you have any timeline at this point between the lawsuit and everything else going on, and when you think you could actually do that?
Well, the Department of Business Regulation is working furiously to get out soon, like the next 30 days, kind of proposed regulations. So, you know, we're moving forward with this because, you know, we have to.
You could have vetoed the budget, Governor, if it was such a big deal and take it, because it is a budget article, we should say. I mean, why didn't you just do that? If it's such a big deal, you're going to go to court, file a lawsuit against a General Assembly. I don't know the last time that's happened. Why wouldn't you veto the budget?
Look, vetoing a budget is an even bigger deal. You grind government to a halt. It's a $10 billion document, and I didn't think it rose to that level. Furthermore, I think it's clearly unconstitutional. This is really a backsliding to the old days. You know, separation of powers, people fought for a long time. It's just basic good government, basic checks and balances. And this is just reminiscent of the old ways of doing things, and I think will prevail in court. So I thought it's important.
So if the Speaker pulls the plug, you'll dismiss the lawsuit?
Well, yeah, then there would be no need to.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to education. Department of Education put out its annual star ratings for schools this week. One of the many items that jumped out, at least to me, was the Johnston schools have a very high teacher absentee problem. The high school there leads the state in chronic teacher absenteeism. Are you worried, with all the focus on Providence, that every other school district will not get the attention that they need?
Yeah, I am not worried about that for a couple of reasons. One, the commissioner is spending as much time outside of Providence as she is in Providence, and she is constantly out in other places and extremely, frankly, aware of that risk. And I think working really hard to make sure it doesn't happen. But here's the other thing. Everything that we're going to do in Providence is something that will be a lesson learned or an approach that can work every place else. So, for example, teacher absenteeism. That's a problem in Providence. It's apparently a problem in Johnston. So whatever we do to fix it in Providence, the commissioner has a plan to make sure everything we do there is transferred to other places. Curriculum. Her huge focus is to have a standardized, high-quality curriculum in the city of Providence. That should be used in every other city and town. So I actually think is very complimentary, but it's a very fair question, and we're going to have to be disciplined to make sure that doesn't happen.
Let me ask you about, going back to the budget, DCYF. So I looked back at the November budget reports that your budget office has put out each year of your term. Every year at this time of year, DCYF has projected a deficit. 2017, $10 million deficit. 2018, $15 million deficit. Right now, $22 million deficit for DCYF. You know, it does seem like your administration has just not been accepting that DCYF needs more money than you're putting into the budget, because there were budget hearings where the DCYF people said, don't give us more money, legislature, we're fine, but they're never fine. Why not just put enough money in to cover DCYF's actual expenses every year? Yeah,
so it's a very fair question. A couple thoughts. To say that we're $22 million over budget now isn't, the people should understand what that means. We're taking care. The only reason that it was assumed the budget would be lower is because there was an assumption that the legislature put in the budget that we'd be taking care of many fewer kids.
Didn't you tell them you'd be taking care of fewer kids?
No, we actually asked for additional money in the legislative session, not in November, but in the spring, and they declined to do that. Between 2016 and 17, we saw a 20% increase in the number of kids in DCYF care. It was like 500 or 600 more families in our care. We can't turn these people away. We're going to have to take care of them. So the budget numbers that you refer to assumed, I think falsely or foolhardily, that 20% dip would decline, and it didn't. So to your point, shouldn't we now, in my submission in January, ask for more money? The answer is yes, and I think we will do that.
Look, I don't have your budget proposal in front of me, so I'm at a loss here, but I want to be clear on what you just said. You're saying that the legislature, you asked for more money, and the legislature turned that down.
Correct.
That sounds very different from what the legislature has said, that they offered more money.
Luda Palma said, quote, there's no way in God's green earth that DCYF will be able to achieve a $222 million budget. Governor, he knew at that moment.
And I said that was fair, just to get really into the weeds. In November or in January of last year, you're right. We made the assumption, now clearly overly optimistically, that there'd be fewer kids in care. And then in the spring, we went back and said, hey, there's not going to be fewer kids in care. We do need more money. And that didn't come out in the final budget. So I guess the 2 points are, number one, it's not that they're over budget because of, say, poor management or not able to live within their budget. They're, quote unquote, over budget because there are more families and children who are in care, and we have to provide that care. To the point of, will I be asking for more in January? I think Ted's right. We should have last year, and we will this year.
Quick deficit question. The Rhode Island Veterans Home, not to the scale of DCYF, they're $3 million over budget. Is the new Bristol facility more expensive to run than you thought?
It is.
Is that the problem?
It is. Well, I wouldn't say it's the only problem. And we need to do a better job. In fact, I had a meeting yesterday with the management there to work on this. We care about our vets. I love that place. I love going there. I was just there on Monday. They deserve every bit of what they get there. They've earned it. We need to manage it better.
So what's so expensive there? What did they tell you?
Well, some of it is we could manage better staffing, overtime. Some of it is it's just more expensive. Like the cleaning contract is much more than we thought it would be because it's a much bigger facility than we thought. So some of it is we under budgeted initially because it's just more expensive to take care of a bigger place, and some of it is we have to manage better.
One last budget question, we'll move on. You are deep in the budget process now, planning, as you said, your January submission to the legislature. How big a deficit are you expecting, and are you looking at raising taxes?
The answer is big. I think it'll be close to $200 million, which, to put that in perspective, is one of the bigger deficits that I've had to close. And I don't know is the answer to your question. So
It's on the table, though?
Here's what I would say. It's a last resort, but there'll be a lot of tough choices. There's no easy way to close a $200 million hole, and I don't want to cut eligibility for health care or Medicaid. I don't want to turn the clock back in terms of job training or education or pre-K. And so there may have to be a component of some kind of increased fees. I have really held the line on broad-based tax increases.
Meaning sales, income?
Sales tax, income tax, corporate tax. We've continued to reduce the car tax. We've continued to reduce the small business tax, and I'd like to stay there. So I'd like to stay there, but on the margin, if there's maybe some smaller ways to raise revenue, I think we have to look at it.
Could one of the things be in the chopping block your Rhode Island Promise program, the free college tuition?
I think that would be a horrible mistake. And also I think that is, in the context of a $10 billion budget, a tiny drop in the bucket. Do you know we've seen a 4 times increase in the on-time graduation rate? A quadrupling. It's one of the most successful programs of its kind. So no, that's not on the chopping block.
Flip it around, then we try to expand it again.
I don't know. I would love to, but when you're facing a $200 million hole, it's gonna. I don't know.
What about pot legalization? Are you going to try that again in the budget?
Maybe. It's interesting. I had lunch 3 weeks ago with the governors of Connecticut and Massachusetts, and I asked Governor Baker what he thought, and he basically said, "Look, you're going to have to do it, so you probably should do it and do it right." And I think he's probably right. And Connecticut, I think, is pretty close to doing it. So it's likely. Last year, we made a step forward with more in medical, and I think the next logical step is adult use.
We have to go to a break. I'm going to ask you one more question. I think it's hysterical. Ted said one budget question. We asked you 5 more.
We can't help ourselves.
Okay. Just on the budget, Rhode Island Board
6.
of Education voted, who's counting to increase tuition at URI, CCRI, and RIC. For that to go forward, you have to put it into the budget.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that?
I will, reluctantly. I was disappointed in the vote. The only good news is that they're modest increases, but yes, I will.
All right, we're going to take a break on Newsmakers. Our guest, obviously, is Governor Gina Raimondo. When we come back, who does she like for president? Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Our guest this week is Governor Gina Raimondo. Ted?
Governor, the IGT deal. There's been a lot of talks. We don't want to spend too much time on it, but you told me in an interview over the summer, this all started when you had a conversation with Marco Sala, who is the Italy-based CEO of IGT. That was early this year, I believe, and he indicated they want to know about their future relationship, their jobs here, and that's what got you behind this deal to extend them. It's now clear this is going to drag into 2020 based on what the legislative leaders are saying. Have you talked to Marco Sala again recently, or anyone around him? And what are they telling you about the delay?
Yeah. I haven't. I have not talked to Marco recently. You know, they're frustrated and disappointed. I would say this is not how you want to do business, right? Marco and his team worked with me, worked with the legislature. I had in my office the Speaker of the House and his staff, the Senate President and his staff. We all signed on to a piece of legislation. The Speaker put his name on it. The Senate President put his name on it. They gave a certain amount of commitment that we were going to go forward. And then 4 months of dilly-dallying and back and forth and political theater, how do you think that makes us look to the outside world? No business wants to do business in that climate. Businesses want transparency, predictability, and a fair shake.
Well, people say what a fair shake is bidding contracts.
Right, a public bid is transparency.
That's part of what the
so I would
opposition's
say a
come
few
from.
things to that. That is not how Rhode Island has ever done lottery business. The 2 contracts with Twin River, the contracts with Newport Grand, the contracts with IGT have all been done through the legislature. Now, the argument for that is it's even more transparent than a bidding process that the administration runs. We could have, it's kind of ironic, right? It's a huge contract. So instead of just letting the administration do the work, we said bring it through the entire legislature. So everyone gets a vote, lots of transparency, lots of hearings. No one's saying don't do your work. I'm just saying when you have the CEO of a major corporation, over 1,000 jobs in your office, with the governor, the speaker, the Senate president, the staff, you shake hands. You remember we put in the legislation and everyone gave a positive quote. Of course, have at it, hire lawyers, hire consultants. I'm not saying you had to vote for it, but do your job. Take
You're saying
the
call a
vote.
vote.
Absolutely.
Have you gotten any indication when there'll be a vote at this point?
No. It's just been process after process. No. So to answer your question, if I were Marco, I'd be thinking twice about doing business in Rhode Island.
Well, now that it doesn't
By
look...
the way,
yes.
Exactly what we saw with the paw socks. Hand-wringing, poor process. I mean, how did that end? Drive to Worcester. There's lots of development happening in Worcester. Could have been in Pawtucket. And I worry so much that the same thing is going to happen here. So, by the way, you have to remember, I have no authority to enter into a contract. There's been lots of chatter about a no-bid contract. There is no contract. I'm not even allowed to enter into a contract until the legislature authorizes it. If they want to make changes, make changes. If they want to make amendments, make amendments. Fine. Do your job. Do something on the legislation that you had your name on. Kick it back to the administration, and then let us get to work. I think it'll take us a year to actually negotiate a contract.
It sounds like you could take the reins now, based on your answer. You could put it out to bid. Have you rethought, with all this going on, it doesn't look like the legislature is going to take it up. Have you rethought putting this contract out to bid?
I haven't, for a few reasons. One, I guess I still had hope the legislature would do its job. And I think that is still the right course of action, because I do think it's 20 years and a lot of money. And I kind of agree with the practice in Rhode Island of letting it go through a big, full public vetting. The other thing is, if I were to do that, as I've said so many times, you're never going to get the jobs component. Or if I put an RFP out that said, you must guarantee a headquarters, $200 million of capital investment, and 1,100 jobs for 20 years.
Tailored for IGT.
You're only going to get IGT. Right. So it's, I don't think it's actually a practical solution.
Let's talk politics,
yes.
Go a little lighter. Mike Bloomberg announced last week he may run for president. He got you to give a friendly, though not endorsement, statement. Earlier this week, former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick jumped in as another center-left choice. You haven't endorsed yet. Who do you like at this point? You have many options. Who are you leaning toward?
I'm not leaning toward anyone.
You're not watching anyone with interest?
I'm watching them all with interest.
Oh, come on.
To be fair, I am watching them all with interest. Look, guys, this isn't a lighter topic. I think this is the future of our republic.
Fair enough.
I don't even think it's purely political. I mean, the stakes are so high on this one. So I'm watching it with interest. I think Mayor Bloomberg could beat President Trump. And I think if he says he's willing to spend whatever it would take, that's formidable. And I think he was a great mayor. I think Deval is a very compelling candidate. Both of these guys are getting in so late that, it's a long shot, a very long shot. But I have always liked Vice President Biden. He came here twice to help me get roadworks passed, which I'll never forget. He'll be in town next week. So I'm not sure how to answer it. I'm worried. and I'll get behind whoever the nominee is.
Worried what? About what exactly?
Trump winning. You know, here's what I'm mostly worried about. I'm worried that this will go right down to the convention for us. So we're going to keep beating each other up until next summer, and it'll be incredibly hard for whoever our nominee is to mount a successful campaign in such a short period of time. Whereas President Trump is already spending, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's got, you know, a clear shot in that regard.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, there's been a big debate just in recent days about some of her opponents calling her angry, and a discussion about, is that a sexist attack? Is it just politics? You obviously have experienced it firsthand as a woman in politics. When you see that, what do you think? Do you think that's sexist, or do you think that's just a normal campaign attack?
Both. I think it's both. I think, look, we all know that it's hard to be a woman in politics. There is absolutely a double standard. A lot of it is unconscious by people. You know, people are just more comfortable with a woman being pleasant, not fighting. And Elizabeth's a fighter. By the way, to her credit, you know, she's clear on her views, and she's going to the mat for it, and I admire that. So I think it's all fair game in politics, and I think anyone who's a fighter could get labeled as angry, but I absolutely think that there's a double standard in the way people see her. Also, I worry that I just don't think that we need that fighting right now. Like, I find myself drawn to, for example, when Buttigieg talks about unifying a winning coalition, that's where I think we need to be. And then the question becomes, who's the person who can unify a winning coalition?
Do you think a 37-year-old mayor is ready to be president?
It's a worry. You know, it's a concern. He's clearly enormously talented. I know myself, I'm a better governor now than I was on day one. You know, you learn, and it's a very big stretch from being the mayor of a tiny city to being president of the United States.
Well, let's talk about your politics real quick. Some people might have cracked Ted's Saturday column and read that you're continuing to raise money in your term limited. They might wonder why. Why is she still raising money?
Yeah. Well, I'll have a legislative agenda that I would like to get passed. All the legislators are on the ballot next year. I may decide to support or oppose legislators that I think are doing the right thing or holding Rhode Island back. So, you know, there are plenty of reasons to need a campaign account just to govern.
Could it also be a need to run for office? Are you open to that?
No,
you're out?
No. Yeah, I'm not going to run again in Rhode Island for Senate.
Everyone thinks you'll run for U.S. Senate. They say Jack Reed will walk away and you'll...
You could take a bet on that and you would win, because it's not something I'm interested in.
We save these shows,
even when your kids are older? Because you always mention your kids.
It's hard for me to imagine.
Interesting.
Let me say that.
All right, look, you're heading to Israel. And
yes, Sunday.
And I want to get this out of the way because people will wonder this. The trip is being paid for by a nonprofit with ties to the Democratic Governors Association, and your Commerce Secretary's travel is being paid for by the Rhode Island Commodores, a group made up of business and political leaders. Okay, what are you hoping to get out of the trip?
Business for Rhode Island. So I have to say, I've always been reluctant to do these out-of-country trade missions, because I've always wondered whether they would yield, you know, real tangible results. On this one, we have like about a dozen business meetings set up with companies that are fast growing, that are looking for U.S. presences. And also have a meeting with the president of Ben Gurion University, which is one of their top tech universities. So we now have the Innovation Center open in Providence. We now have a couple innovation campuses with URI going. I would love to be able to come back and say, you know, one or more companies is going to open a U.S. operation in here. Ben Gurion is going to do a special partnership with URI or with Brown. So it's, Israel, for a small country, is a juggernaut in terms of cyber companies, healthcare companies, digital companies, data companies, and if I can get any of that to Rhode Island, I'd be happy.
30 seconds. You live in Providence. A lot of people on the east side do not like that your administration's plan to get rid of the Gano Street exit.
Yes,
do you support that idea from RIDA?
It's an inconvenience if you live in the area, but it's RIDOT's call. They have to do, and they are doing, a traffic study. And what I've said to them is just make sure you also take into account the local traffic, not just the highway traffic. So over the next few months, they'll do a traffic study, and then they'll do what's right. But it is, I personally use that exit all the time, but that is not a reason to keep it open.
Fair enough.
So you're not going to try to bully your way with
No,
into your
it'll
exit?
be evidence-based, do the study, and we'll see where we go.
All right, Governor Gina Raimondo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. If you
Thank
missed
you.
any of it, it's on WPRI.com. And do not forget to subscribe to our podcast through iTunes. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We will see you next week on Newsmakers.